Like many of you, I've been playing Monster Hunter lately in anticipation of Monster Hunter Wilds. As I dove into the game, I couldn't help but think back to a particular crossover in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, a moment that highlighted the influence Monster Hunter had on the Metal Gear series. So let's break down how Capcom's iconic franchise left its mark on Kojima and on Metal Gear. At its core, Peace Walker feels very much like a Monster Hunter game, and this was no accident. Both the PSP and Monster Hunter were massive in Japan, especially among teenagers and young adults who could play them with friends during breaks at school or on public transportation thanks to the system's portability. The Monster Hunter formula, with its bite-sized missions and co-op capabilities, contributed greatly to the franchise's success and made it into the massive series it is today. This same structure and focus on portable cooperative gameplay would go on to influence Kojima's design philosophy for Metal Gear during this period. In an interview with IGN, Kojima disclosed that he viewed the PSP's younger demographic as new and important. He also found that this demographic, for the most part, didn't really find his games interesting or appealing. Sadly, even his own son made his opinion on Metal Gear known, stating, quote, "Oh, Metal Gear is such a shitty game," end quote. This was, at least according to Kojima, up until the release of Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, which his son seemed to enjoy, primarily due to the fact that he could take it with him anywhere. Kojima even mentioned Monster Hunter by name in this same interview and stated that he would love to continue the work his team did with Portable Ops and expand on its ideas in order to create a game Metal Gear fans and the younger crowd could get into. Originally, Peace Walker was intended to be the 5th numbered entry in the Metal Gear series. However, after feedback from overseas marketing teams who didn't think a numbered title would work on a portable console, the 5 was dropped and it became known as Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Development began shortly after Metal Gear Solid 4, with Kojima planning to hand off the project to younger Kojima production staff, allowing him to focus on what he envisioned as the Metal Gear series' vertical leap, a new game engine that would set the stage for the next big Metal Gear installment. Peace Walker was supposed to be the horizontal evolution that would keep fans engaged while the new engine was being developed. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned, and Kojima had to take full control of Peace Walker's development himself. The objective Kojima set for his team was simple: make a game marketable and enjoyable to the age range of middle school to college-age kids for the PSP that could bridge the generational gap between new and old Metal Gear fans. A game that parents and children alike could enjoy together, and a way to try to get the younger demographic interested in Metal Gear. Kojima Productions nailed this vision with Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, blending Metal Gear's tactical gameplay with a mission structure and co-op mechanics that made it feel remarkably similar to a Monster Hunter game.
Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker.
Peace Walker is a weird game, and I say that in the most loving way possible, as it is one of my favorite and most replayed Metal Gear titles. What makes it so weird? Well, for one, it ditched the traditional linearity of the games that came before it and instead opted for shorter self-contained missions within a predetermined map that was then divided into multiple sections. Sound familiar? That mission structure is virtually the same exact format classic Monster Hunter titles use for its quests and hunts. Maps in Monster Hunter are divided into multiple biomes that are inhabited by different flora and fauna. Depending on your mission, you'll make your way around the different sections of the map and either collect items or hunt monsters. Before you set foot in these missions, however, you need to make sure you're prepared. Preparation is key in Monster Hunter, so making sure you bring along the right armor type, recovery items, and weapons is of utmost importance. Once you're ready to embark on a hunt, you can take advantage of one of the very best aspects of Monster Hunter, the ability to take on most, if not all of these missions with friends. Peace Walker's missions are set up almost exactly the same way. While you won't be spending your time fishing, mining, or picking herbs, Fultoning soldiers to bolster your mother base and finding item, weapon, or camouflage recipes can be seen as the analog to these activities. Provided your mother base teams are high enough, those recipes can then be used to create stronger weapons and items that can then be taken into missions, which is yet another difference introduced in Peace Walker. Historically in Metal Gear games, the player acquires their weapons and equipment by finding them as they attempt to progress through the story. Peace Walker changes the formula by allowing the player to create loadouts before embarking on missions, consisting of weapons and items best suited to their selected mission or boss fight. The loadout system is nowhere near as in-depth as the intricate armor and weapon systems in Monster Hunter, but the inspiration is clearly there. For example, going into a sneaking mission, then the BDU that helps you blend into your environment the best is the right choice. Or maybe you're familiar with this particular mission and are primarily farming for higher ranked soldiers, so you take the sneaking suit in order to get the drop on enemies. For boss fights, the battle dress should be your go-to. This armor type allows you to carry an extra weapon and cuts the damage you take by a significant amount. This system continued and was expanded on in future Metal Gear titles, but more on that a little later. For now, let's take a closer look at the boss fights in Peace Walker.
What the hell?
Bosses in Peace Walker are, you guessed it, heavily inspired by monster encounters from Monster Hunter. The Chrysalis, for example, mimics a Rathian's moveset. The ability to fly, swoop in on Snake, and dodge attacks while in midair are all staples of a typical Rathian encounter. The Pupa, on the other hand, acts similarly to something like a Nargacuga, my personal favorite monster from Monster Hunter. It's quick, repositions often, and keeps Snake on his toes throughout the entire encounter. Its electric discharge attack even reminds me of when a Nargacuga shoots out its tail spikes. If you look closely, the Pupa even has a similar animation to the Nargacuga after it repositions. Even the Cocoon resembles a huge, slow-moving monster like Shara Ishvalda. Alongside the normal AI boss battles, Peace Walker features custom AI battles that make up the bulk of endgame progression. These custom battles pit the player up against souped-up versions of the AI bosses that have more HP, are quicker, and in some cases, even have moves in their arsenal that are able to one-shot Snake. These custom battles are more than likely inspired by the monster variants you come across during late game progression in the Monster Hunter games. Variant monsters usually have a descriptor before their name, such as Raging or Savage, and possess unique traits that make the encounters with them more difficult. Braving these harder fights in Monster Hunter as well as Peace Walker are well worth it, as the rewards they offer are usually amplified. In most Monster Hunter games, the main gameplay loop is continuously farming monsters that provide you the necessary materials you need in order to craft or upgrade your armor to then continue taking on tougher monsters. During these encounters, you can target specific body parts with repeated attacks in order to increase the drop rate of materials. Finally, once the monster is weak, you can choose to either capture it or end its misery and carve its corpse to collect your rewards. While Peace Walker's bosses don't drop materials, they do all have parts that can be focused and destroyed to not only make the fight a little easier, but also to farm their AI boards. AI boards are collected at the end of the encounter by going into the AI pod, and this process can be seen as Peace Walker's version of carving. The AI boards can then be implemented into your Metal Gear Zeke to raise its various attributes and stats. Specific parts of the AI bosses can be focused in a similar fashion in order to attach them to Zeke as well. Parts such as the railgun, head parts, and body parts can all be farmed by repeating these missions over and over, paralleling the gameplay loop from Monster Hunter. Zeke can then be sent out on Outer Ops missions alongside your selected Mother Base soldiers in order to retrieve useful supplies and, in some cases, even new recipes for weapons and items. If you guess that there's a Monster Hunter counterpart to Outer Ops, you're starting to catch on. Monster Hunter allows you to send your adorable feline friends out on missions to collect useful supplies and items for you as you go about doing your missions. This feature has been a part of the series for quite a while, but it's remained a staple of the series, and it's even included in the most recent entry, Monster Hunter Rise. While this mode isn't a huge part of either game, it just goes to show you that even the minor systems from Monster Hunter found their way into Peace Walker. With all of the parallels and influences we've discussed in mind, there really is no better example of Monster Hunter's overall influence on Peace Walker than the actual Monster Hunter crossover extra ops named Hunting Quests. You unlock the crossover missions by first giving Chico's tapes a listen, which is quite clever as his tapes primarily go over strange animal, beast, and monster folklore. You then need to start up extra ops number 29, complete the objective, but instead of heading to the extraction point, head over to the beach map from the very beginning of the game. At the dock you will find Trenya, and the first mission will unlock after a pun-filled cutscene. This mission is Extra Ops number 121, and the objective is to successfully hunt a Rathalos, one of the most iconic and well-known monsters from Monster Hunter. This flying wyvern has been in every single Monster Hunter and was even the monster on the cover art for the very first game. Its attacks in Peace Walker are nearly identical to those in Monster Hunter. You can even target specific parts such as the Rathalos' tail in order to break it off. This helps prevent some of its most lethal attacks and also helps you farm for specific materials that have a higher drop rate when certain monster parts are destroyed. For example, take the Rathalos' wing that is needed to craft the Tanegashima rifle. You can increase the odds in your favor by simply playing the Twilight version of this encounter, which is Extra Ops 122. You can further heighten the chance of this item dropping by breaking both of the Rathalos' wings during the fight, as well as slicing off its tail. Finally, tranquilizing the monster over outright killing it will also help your chances of getting this material to drop. This is a nod to capturing monsters in Monster Hunter, which can only be done when the monster is weak and is either in a trap or asleep. The same process can be repeated for the rest of the Hunting Quest Extra Ops in order to farm the materials you need for the ultimate co-op weapon, the Human Slingshot. In order to achieve this, you need to take on the Tigrex both in its normal and Twilight stages, as well as taking on Gear Rex, which has to be the coolest thing to come out of this entire collaboration. Gear Rex is completely unique to Peace Walker, and it is inspired by Metal Gear Rex from the very first Metal Gear Solid. Its tail even resembles Rex's railgun. I think it's amazing that they went the extra mile and created a brand new monster just for Peace Walker. Every single one of these fights is extremely faithful to a hunt in Monster Hunter. It almost feels like you're playing with the heavy bowgun in an actual Monster Hunter quest. There's even a neat little Easter egg that they included in the unique stage you fight some of these monsters. You can actually cook your rations just like you would cook a piece of meat in Monster Hunter. Using the barbecue spit that is set up in this little mound, you can cook your rations and make them more effective. It even plays the little song that helps you time how long you need to cook. Now before we move on, I'm sure most of you knew about the crossover missions before this video, but did you know that Big Boss and The Boss found their way into a Monster Hunter title? In Monster Hunter Portable 3rd, which was only released in Japan, a set of DLC hunts were added that allowed you to farm for armor sets that, when worn, make you take on the appearance of either Big Boss or The Boss. Pretty cool, huh? After Peace Walker, Kojima's design philosophy continued to evolve. Metal Gear Solid 5 shows how some of these influences became fully realized in a new, expansive open-world format. Ground Zeroes, the prologue chapter before the Phantom Pain, takes place almost immediately after the ending of Peace Walker, and it is much more akin to classic Metal Gear titles. The Phantom Pain, however, can be seen as the natural evolution to what Peace Walker introduced. The loadout system is still there, and this time around, you can actually go around the open world, picking herbs, gathering resources, and even hunting or capturing animals, all to further progress your new mother base. The shorter mission structure is also still there, and despite Kojima saying in interviews that the inspiration for this were TV shows and their episodic nature, I see it as just another evolution of what Peace Walker started. Sadly, there are hardly any boss fights this time around, and no co-op whatsoever, but anyone who has played through the Phantom Pain knows that Peace Walker walked so the Phantom Pain could run. There's also one more game that was created using the Fox engine that also happens to be the most hated Metal Gear game in the entire series. Metal Gear Survive, despite being a mediocre game in almost every department, actually feels like it has a little bit of Monster Hunter in its DNA. Survive's story is pretty ridiculous and forgettable, but where the game truly shines is in its multiplayer co-op missions. Most of these are tower defense modes in which you need to defend the objective, but there are these boss missions that are almost straight out of Monster Hunter. The best part? They can be taken on with friends. While this probably won't convince anyone to check out Survive, I always wondered what it was about this game that I actually enjoyed, and through the creation of this video, I was able to figure it out. In no way, shape, or form is Survive anywhere near as good as even the worst Monster Hunter game, but there is something to it in at least these particular missions. Also, did you know that these monsters were actually thought up and created by Masahiro Ito, the legendary artist most well known for his work on the Silent Hill games? Overall, while Metal Gear Solid 5 and Survive both expanded and ditch some of Monster Hunter's influence, I do think there's enough of it there to warrant a mention in this video. I personally do not think Metal Gear Solid 5 would have turned out the way that it did if it wasn't for Monster Hunter, for better or worse. There is one more game I very quickly want to mention. It's not Metal Gear related, but it is a Hideo Kojima game. Death Stranding released in 2019 and is Kojima's first game after going independent. It's very different from Metal Gear and from most other games out there actually. So what could Death Stranding possibly have in common with Monster Hunter? Well, if you've ever tried an egg quest from the early days of Monster Hunter, you know exactly what these two games have in common. All jokes aside, I think the best way to illustrate the connection between these two is by referencing this quote from an interview Kojima had with Kotaku back in 2009. In it, Kojima described how he viewed multiplayer gaming over the years. He states, quote, "Multiplayer games were originally cutthroat. In multiplayer gaming, especially in online gaming, first it was about competition with each other, then the next level was co-op, but it wasn't really about friendship. It was about benefiting from your teammates, a give and take kind of thing. But this time, I want to take it to the next level and to give a feeling of sharing. I want players to feel the joy of helping each other out. For example, there's the game's life bar. When players are close to each other, it becomes one. Even if one player is dying or weaker, they can help each other. We want to express the strength of friendship through that." End quote. Death Stranding, in my opinion, is the quintessential example of this sentiment. It's a game all about connecting. Despite it not having traditional multiplayer or co-op, it's a game all about helping your fellow players all around the world. Whether it be through the use of ladders, ropes, warning signs about impending danger, or simply shelter to take refuge from the elements. Other players can leave supplies for you in lockers and give you likes if one of your items was left in a helpful position. While it's true that you are not able to link up and play with friends or strangers in real time, reminders that you are not alone in the game's often insurmountable tasks are everywhere. At the end of the day, it's clear that Monster Hunter helped shape not just Peace Walker, but the very core of Kojima's approach to game design, pushing him to create experiences that bring people together, even in the most unlikely ways. And with Monster Hunter Wilds and Metal Gear Solid Delta coming next year, who knows what connections we'll make next. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.